Hi everyone. So today I'm going to talk about 5 signs that you are not an ISFP. For clarity, when I talk about ISFP on this channel, I mean the type that leads with introverted sensing, with extroverted feeling as the auxiliary function. Now, the reason I say that is the ISFP, and I've said this multiple times in this channel, is that the decision to, for some reason, ignore the dominant function when it comes to determining what a rational or irrational type is by the Myers-Briggs community, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem to follow a very clear rationale. Instead, it seems to be a product of mental gymnastics, where suddenly the creative or auxiliary function and its extrovertedness somehow overrides the very nature of a dominant function. And yes, there isn't a good rationale for that. I've explored that already in my channel for why this is not a good idea. It doesn't make good sense. It overestimates the importance of extroverted elements over introverted elements, which I think is quite wrong. There are multiple reasons, and you can see my video on perceiving versus judging explained correctly in order to understand my position on that more. But at the end of the day, I would say that the ISFP is a type that leads with introverted sensing. What are the 5 signs that you are not an ISFP? Well, the first one is if you are restless, aggressive, and tend to rush through life. So this is something which you'll notice about ISFPs. They are not restless types. They do not rush into things. They're certainly not aggressive or impetuous. This is a type that likes to take everything at a sort of organic and natural feeling pace. This is a type which does things as and when it feels comfortable to do them. It is a type which doesn't like to feel rushed into things, does not like to increase the intensity of action in the moment. Everything needs to be peaceful and harmonious, and again operating at that natural feeling pace, a sort of means of preserving the homeostasis. So there's a certain slowness, you could say, that could cause other types which are more extroverted sensing oriented, to get frustrated with their pace. And the key thing here is that the ISFP does not like people changing their pace. If an ISFP is in a bit of a hurry, it can happen, but it's quite rare. They also will actually be quite particular about it still going at their pace, even if it's at a more hurried pace. But typically, ISFPs are not going to be needing to speed things up. If anything, they're needing to slow things down a bit so that it is more comfortable. It is, again, less likely to disrupt their immediate physical circumstances and atmosphere. And so, yes, they're not restless. They're not going to be aggressive. They're quite conflict averse, in fact, and tend to avoid socially awkward situations. So, yeah, not restless, not aggressive, and not a type that rushes. Very much a type that stops and smells the roses instead. That's what the ISFP is really about. The second sign that you are not an ISFP is if you feel disconnected from your feelings. ISFPs are actually very much in touch with how they feel in the moment. They are sensory and ethical types, so they are doubly involved in the present circumstances around them, what it feels like, how they feel about it, do they feel comfortable with it, do they like it, those sorts of things ISFPs are very much in touch with. And as long as they are comfortable with a person, they're happy to also share how they're feeling in that moment about different things. So if you are someone who's disconnected, if you are quite detached from your feelings in that moment, then you're unlikely to be an ISFP. ISFPs are very much involved in it, not detached from it. Sign number 3. That is if you are hungry for knowledge and quickly understand new processes. So this is the thing about the ISFP. This type is not very comfortable with integrating large amounts of factual information all at once, especially when there's a certain pressure for them to get across new things quickly, to understand it, to apply it, to come up with new solutions to the situation. ISFPs are far more comfortable with stability within a finite system, something where the amount of information to get across is limited in its amount, which they can really get used to and even become an expert in. They're fine with that. But if there's lots and lots of stuff coming in, their weak extroverted thinking, which is a vulnerable function for them, flares up essentially. It becomes too much information for an ISFP. So they like to take the time to go through new pieces of knowledge, to understand it, to make sense of it in terms of their experiences. And ISFPs typically learn things through their experiences. They have to sort of go through it themselves, quite physically, quite tactically, or at least be able to talk it out with someone whom they like and are close to. If they don't have that ability to sort of embody this new piece of knowledge and ensure it makes sense according to what they already know, then that's very stressful, and they're going to struggle to integrate that. ISFPs really hate being put into a situation where they're put on the spot with knowledge outside of their zone of familiarity that they have to somehow get across. Not only is it a big strain for the way that they actually like to process information, which is typically not factual and typically more experiential and emotional, but at the same time, they do not like the idea of having to somehow update their knowledge all the time. They like peace. They like stability. And in the same way that they aren't restless and aggressive, they also find that too much information makes things a lot more stressful. It doesn't have to get across all of this suddenly, and it's almost painful to have to get across all that extra stuff. They like simplicity, like things to fit together, to make sense, so that there is a flow, not only in terms of their experience, but also in terms of their understanding. That it does not add more stress, more strain. They don't have to think really, really, really hard about it all the time. They like to turn their heads off, essentially, and relax. They can't do that if there's too much information being fired at them all at once. This doesn't mean that ISFPs aren't curious. They can be very curious in different ideas and perspectives. They like to open themselves up to that. But what they don't want is that to be a sort of pressure for them to learn this, to master it, to apply it effectively, and use that and connect new possibilities up to a new demand on their competence. That's what they don't like. But they are still open. It's just knowledge for the sake of knowing lots and lots of things, and that idea that knowledge is power to do more things more effectively. They do not relate to that. They do not like that way of thinking. If anything, those who flaunt their knowledge they won't like, because they get the sense of that person clearly thinks they're better than me. And ISFPs really do not like that either. They'd like people to be very much on the same level. Reason number 4 that you would not be an ISFP. If you are someone who is actively curious and actively bring new ideas to people's attention. Now, I say actively curious, because that's the point. ISFPs can be curious. They tend to be quite open-minded people. They tend to be open to new possibilities from others. They're looking for others to provide that. But the ISFP is not actively curious. This is not a type which proactively goes and seeks out new things, new ways of thinking, new perspectives. They don't broaden their own mindset. They are very much receptive to other people to bring that to them. So they often like to surround themselves with lots of interesting people with new perspectives. But what an ISFP is unlikely to do is, on their own initiative, go out and seek out a new area of interest and broaden that. If left to their own devices, ISFPs instead tend to stick to their comfort zone, which can become quite stagnant. And they know it's stagnant, and they don't like that it's stagnant. They're looking to have their lives broadened and enriched and expanded. But on their own, they don't do that themselves. They lack the confidence to traverse that ambiguity, that sense where anything can happen. And if anything can happen, maybe something really, really bad could happen. And maybe that is the thing that they feel will happen. So an ISFP almost needs someone else to help them to navigate that uncertainty, to navigate that ambiguity, to turn their attention to those positive possibilities. And then they'll follow that person's lead in the area, as long as it still feels comfortable and safe in the present moment. But yes, they aren't the ones who are bringing that chaos to the land of order. They need someone else to bring that to them. The fifth reason why someone would not be an ISFP. This is if they are irritated by people who run after lots of new things. So I said that they themselves are not actively curious, but they are curious. And this is a type, again, which likes new ideas and perspectives being brought to them. So you may get this sort of perception of an ISFP as not liking people who bring lots of new, unusual stuff to the table. That's not true. As I said, the ISFP is very open-minded. They are very forgiving of eccentricities in terms of alternative perspectives that people bring. They like that zaniness to a certain degree in the other person. They are attracted to interesting people. I talked, for instance, of my wife, and one thing she really liked about my dating profile when we were sort of flicking through those apps, what made her like what I did is that I said I was a psychologist. And she said, oh, not like those lawyers and accountants I tend to see. She liked the fact that I was bringing something new and fresh to the table, that and there's a potential of a conversation she hadn't had before. ISFPs are really attracted to that sort of thing in people. So if that person then goes and runs after lots of new ideas and can be quite distractible in terms of adding to the realm of potentiality, they are very forgiving of that, even supportive of that. They don't mind that ambiguity as long as they are helped in navigating it so it doesn't become all too much and all too scary. Yes, there are other types which do not like increasing the ambiguity. Other types which are very much not about expanding the realm of possibilities. But that's not the ISFP. The ISFP actually enjoys that. And because their comfort zone is their chief focus when they're left on their own, they are looking for someone to bring those new ideas, to expand the realm of what is possible. And in doing so, frees them from a certain negative, fatalistic way of thinking when they try to think about the future, because their introverted intuition is more accessible to them than their extrovert intuition. So someone who brings new ideas almost frees them from that fatalistic thinking, which they don't like and don't want to have to engage in, because, when they have to grapple with the future, that's easier for them to do than to think of all the new possibilities. But they'd much rather have someone bring these new ideas and these new possibilities. And in doing so, freshen things up, broaden and enrich their experiences in the day-to-day. I hope that was helpful to you in understanding the 5 reasons why you are not an ISFP. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Please ensure that you subscribe and click the bell so that you get notifications on all my other new content coming through to the World Socionic Society channel. If you would like to find out your type, please follow the link in the description below to book your own diagnostic interview. And if you'd like to understand more about your type and all the other types, please consider purchasing my course, the link to which is also available in the description below. Thank you very much.